Hello, welcome to Homeschool-Life. My name is Bobby, and in this video, we're going to be looking at an overview of our accounting tool and what you might need to do and what you might need to think about as you get started using it. Of course, if you'd like to follow along, you'll need to log into your admin site. From your home page of your admin site, here is how you access the accounting tool. Once you click on the accounting icon, you will be directed to the accounts receivable listing. This is a listing of all of your families, and on this listing you can see any past due balances here. As you might notice, some of them are highlighted in red. That means that those are not current. And also you can see in this far column balances on the account, not necessarily past due, just invoices that are remaining open. Now, in our system, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the system at all, the basis of the system is the creation of invoices representing amounts that your families owe for various things. It can be anything from class registrations if you are a co-op. It could also include event signups if you're not a co-op. It could be events like science fairs, spelling bees, field trips, that sort of thing. It could also be things like yearbook sales or graduations that families are paying for. Since we are an accounts receivable system, it only is going to be used for events and things that you are actually accepting payments for through our website. Obviously, payments that you are making to outside vendors and such would not be monitored or maintained in our system. So, from the accounts receivable listing, you can obviously look at your families. You can click on an individual family to see their profile. You can click on this icon here to see a statement of account for this family. This is going to show any outstanding balances that they have. And in this case, this family here does not have an outstanding balance. And you can click here to look at all of their invoices and payments as well as adjustments that have been made on this family account during this current year. Returning to my accounts receivable listing, there's a lot of things you can do from this listing, but since this is just an accounting overview, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You can filter the accounts receivable listing. You can email statements to members. You can print and you can download. There is a separate video which goes into more detail on how to do each of these functions. The second option you'll notice under the accounting heading is on invoices. When I click on that, you'll see that the system brings up a list of all invoices that have been generated for my families. Right now, what you're looking at is the membership renewal invoices that were sent out to each one of them. You can see here that some of them are paid and some of them are not paid. You can see the amount of the invoices here. You can see who the family is over here. And you can see the invoice numbers or the categories that these invoices fall into. All of these with RRs are registration and renewals. Those with SUs are signups. We'll talk a little bit more about accounting categories when we get to settings. The next option that you can go to from your accounting heading is the payments. And this will show all of the payments that have been made toward the invoices on the account. If your group is one that uses paperless or PayPal, these payments will automatically be recorded and the transaction IDs will appear here on your payment listing. Obviously, you can still see your payment number here assigned by the system, which lists the category. This would be a registration and renewal invoice that was paid, the family name, which of your accounts it came out of. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to settings, the date that the payment was made, and then there's always a description. Sometimes groups accept PayPal payments, but they also might accept checks and cash payments. Those are also listed on this listing. And you can see here's an example of one. This particular invoice was paid with a check. And those are actually posted manually by an admin user, or maybe your treasurer. The next area that you can look at from the accounting heading is the adjustments. Adjustments would be credits that you might have on the account. And in this case, we have a couple. Most of these are because of a cancellation for a play that was scheduled in March. So that was canceled. The people were issued refunds. Some of them were issued refunds by PayPal, and you can see that was indicated here. Some of them were issued checks through online bill pay, and that was indicated here. You can see here the amounts of these refunds. Here's a couple that were canceled by the system. These are classes that this student signed up for, and then she withdrew from those classes at mid-year. And so there was an adjustment or a credit issued for that, and you'll see that noted here. We also have a couple down at the bottom here. This group has an adjustment that they issue if a child attends their own parent's class. Obviously, they don't need to pay their own parent for the class, so they give this teachers a credit, obviously, when their own child attends the class, and you can see that there's a couple of those here. The next area that we're going to look at is called the accounting logs. If I click here, you will now be directed to the accounting logs, and this is just a place where certain functions that are taking place within the system are logged. This includes anything from PayPal payments, paperless payments, invoice changes, payment changes, and adjustment changes. They're logged here. They're logged for a period of time, going back 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, or 90 days. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, and they're not used very often. Only now and then will you ever have need of looking at the logs. But the area that I really want to spend the most time on today is settings. And this is particularly important as you start using your accounting system. You're going to have to make some decisions, and you're going to want to set your system up so that it will best function for your particular group. These settings are always unique to every group. So let's take a look at some of the things under accounting settings. The first thing you're going to notice is called the general settings, and that is right here. The fiscal year is going to be different for every group depending on whether or not they start and end their year according to the school calendar or sometimes according to the calendar year. This can be changed easily just by going down and selecting a different month, and you can actually select days within the month. Some groups have fiscal years that start, say, August the 15th. So you can change those easily. What that really affects is how your invoices and payments display on your listings. So if you have your current fiscal year begins August the 1st, invoices from August of the previous year obviously are not going to show. You can always use a drop down and ask the system to show you invoices from a previous school year, but really this fiscal year setting just determines what invoices and payments are actually going to display as a default. Obviously, the currency here has to do whether you're a US group or whether you're a Canadian group. The default is US. And then if you were to change either one of these, you would click on the update in order to save that change. The next area that I want to talk about is the accounting categories, and that is right here. And I do want to spend a little bit more time on the accounting categories than anything else that we've talked about so far, because it's really important as you set your system up to establish these categories right up front to save a lot of time down the road. All right, so the first several accounting categories that are in this gray area are the system defaults that actually come with your system. They are pre-identified by us. And there are 5 of those. There's a class registration with the code of CR. There's class registration recurring payments, CRRP. There are registration and renewals, RR, signups, SU, and other, which is kind of a catch-all, OT. You'll notice here that this group has set up a few additional customized categories, one for field trips and one for admin use only, which is a completely separate category used by some groups. And we'll get into that in a totally different video here as we learn how to apply credits later. I would like to spend a little bit more time talking about the payment pools. You'll notice that right here. And this is really important that you have a complete understanding of how these payment pools work as you determine which accounting categories to use with various invoices. So we're going to take just a few minutes and discuss that at this time. As you get ready to set up your accounting system, there are three types of payment pools that you need to understand. The first is full payment, the second is partial payment, and the third is a type of full payment called CRRP, and that stands for Class Registration Recurring Payments. Let's take a look at the full payment pool first. There are already default categories set up for you, and these include RR, which is registration and renewals, SU, which is signups, OT, which is other, sort of that catch-all category, and CRRP, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You can also set up customized categories in the full payment pool. Invoices that are created in the full payment categories must be paid in full when the payment is made. In other words, the amount of the payment has to be the same as the amount of the invoice. No partial payments can be made, and credits must also be applied in full. Credit amounts must match invoice amounts. So in a full payment accounting category, you cannot apply a partial payment or credit to an invoice. In other words, if you had a $50 invoice, you could not apply a $10 credit or a $10 payment toward that invoice. Payments will always apply to specific invoices. The paid status of these invoices will either be yes or no. And reports of payments made toward invoices are more specific and detailed. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we discuss partial payments and how they differ. Though the system is designed only to accept full payments for invoices or full credits, there are a few ways to apply partial payments or partial credits. These workarounds do need to be limited, though, because they require admin involvement. So you don't want to use a full payment category with the intention of often applying partial payments. It's not set up that way. So let's talk about partial payment. There is one default partial payment category already set up for you, and that is CR, which is class registration. And you can add additional partial payment categories if you wish. In the partial payment pools, invoices that are created may be paid by your members in any amount at any time. The system is not going to track due dates and past due invoices because they are really due at any time. They can be paid at any time, rather. Partial credits may also be applied, and it's very easy to apply credits in partial payment categories. And this allows complete flexibility for your members to make their payments, as I stated, at any time for any amount, or for you as an admin to apply payments at any time for any amount. But there are some important considerations in these partial payment categories. First of all, payments do not apply to specific invoices. Payments are applied to the overall total of all the invoices in that category for that member. For example, if you have $100 worth of CR, class registration invoices for a particular family, and they make a payment of $20, it reduces their balance to $80, but that $20 payment does not apply to any specific invoice or any specific class. The invoice paid status is therefore always going to be NA, which stands for not applicable, because the payments do not apply to the invoices directly, but rather to the balance of all the invoices. Since the payments do not apply to the specific invoices, your reporting options are going to be more limited. Since all payments for classes will apply to the overall balance of all classes for a family, you could not determine if a specific class has been paid in full. So let's move on now and discuss CRRP, which again is Class Registration Recurring Payments. This is a default category. It's already set up for you in the system, and it is only used for class registration. It is kind of a compromise between the full payment categories and CR, which is partial payment. because it is a full payment category, but you can still spread your payments out over time. So how does this work? Well, the group administrator sets up one or more payment schedules with due dates. For each due date, the administrator would determine how much is to be paid on that date. During class registration, invoices are generated for each of the due dates for each of the classes. There are some important things to consider with CRRP. Each invoice must still be paid in full when the payment is made, because it is a full payment category. No partial payments or credits may be applied to these invoices unless you use some type of workaround. Invoices will have a paid status of yes or no, and therefore there are many options for reports. For example, you could easily determine if a biology class for a specific family has been paid in full or not. You could determine whether all of the classes for a specific teacher have been paid in full or not. So which type is better for your group? Well, if you want your members to have total flexibility with the amounts and dates of their payments, and you will not require reports on payments towards specific invoices, partial payment may be right for you. For class registration, this would be CR. If you want your members to have specific due dates and to pay invoices in full, and if you want to run reports of your invoices paid, full payment may be right for you. For class registration, this would be CRRP. And for groups that don't do classes, there are already default payment categories set up, RR, SUOT, and you may also add others if you wish. If you're still not certain about which of these payment pools might work best for your group, feel free to create a ticket in the technical support section of your admin homepage. We would be very happy to discuss the specific needs of your group and help you decide which one works best for you. That summarizes the 3 types of payment pools in the accounting categories, and I'd like to now return to the accounting settings section of your admin site and continue discussing the setups there. Here we are back on the accounting settings page. We just finished discussing the accounting categories and specifically these payment pools here. You'll note that there is a description of these payment pools in gray down here in this area in case you need to review it at any time. Moving down, the next section is called adjustment categories. That's located here. Adjustments would be issued for maybe discounts or credits or sometimes refunds that you might issue. These are the default accounts, adjustment categories rather, and this is an additional category that's been added by this group. You can always add additional adjustment categories if you wish. And the final area within accounting settings is this section down here, and that is called accounts. And in this area, you will set up payment accounts and the method by which you will accept payments for those various accounts. In this example, this group here has a general account set up, and in that general account, they accept payments through PayPal, but they also have a cash-only account set up, in which, of course, they do not accept PayPal payments. Then they also have accounts set up for each of their teachers. A few of those teachers, this one here and this one up here, they do accept PayPal, while the others do not. This is a choice that they've made. In this section, you would establish which is your default account. So unless otherwise stated, your invoices would default to the general account. And here you would also have the option of making these accounts active or inactive. That pretty much concludes the accounting settings, things that you need to consider when you first set up your system. There's one more section under the accounting heading that I want to look at, and that is called payment code. In this section, if you were wanting to generate a PayPal or a paperless button that would link to PayPal or paperless, to accept perhaps donations or payments for something else. You could create some payment code, and then you could create that button and embed that maybe within a widget or within another page on your member site. I'm not going to get into how to do that. There is another video for that, but just keep in mind that this is an option that's available if you ever need to do that. I think that gives you a pretty good overview of the accounting system and what things you might want to think about as you're setting things up. If you need additional assistance, we do have a help center. There are several videos available, and they focus on specific sections of the system more than just an overview. If you still have additional questions, feel free to go to your admin homepage in this technical support area and create a ticket. With your specific question, we'll respond to that and try to help you work through that. This concludes the accounting overview. Thank you for watching.